These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Gentlemen, Twins fans around the universe, tighten your belts because things could get dicey this week in the American League Central. The Twins have a one-game lead over the Guardians. As we sit here recording this, I am at Grandview Lodge up in northern Minnesota for some Hubbard Radio Company meetings in a very lavish-looking hotel room, I must say so.
Potential endorsement too. Like if they want to knock at the door and be like, "We'll give you a lot to talk about," us, you'll be like, "Hey, I love Grandview Lodge."
There's a Keurig in here. I don't even drink coffee, but I might have to start today. Very nice.
Oh, I love a good hotel Keurig is the key to life, man. You can get your day started right with caffeine.
Someone came by to give me a foot rub this morning. I don't know if they worked here or not, but the amenities are very nice here at Grandview.
Rex Ryan.
Yeah, it was Rex Ryan. Yes.
Rex Ryan knocked at your door. Hey, can I give you a foot rub?
I'm very uncomfortable.
Yeah. So the Twins have a one-game lead over the Guardians, a two-game lead over the White Sox. But here's the conundrum: the Twins play the Dodgers on the road for 2 games. Maybe the best team in baseball. Their pitching staff's a little out of whack right now, but that's still a ridiculous team and lineup. Meanwhile, the Guardians and the White Sox get to feast, if they choose to, on the bottom of the American League Central. So the Guardians get the Tigers, and then the White Sox get the Royals. So things could tighten up here even more than they already are as we look in the present of Twins baseball. But Judd, you suggested, I think we always pride ourselves here on Mackie and Judd and on Purple Daily, getting out ahead of potential talkers. Call it reckless speculation. Call it just, wanting to, be the buzz factory.
Buzz factory.
Oh, Buzz Factory.
Buzz factory.
People laughed at us when we suggested that Jose Barrios might be traded last summer around May or June. You guys are just drumming up randomness, right? Sometimes we are, and sometimes we are soothsayers. And so I think this is a good time here as the Twins have day off yesterday and some time to collect their thoughts. How well has the Carlos Correa signing worked, big picture, to this point? And what are the chances that he still has a Twins uniform on, a year from now or at the beginning of next season? Let's do kind of a state of Carlos Correa and the Twins little segment here on Mackie and Judd.
So full disclosure, I think I got this idea on Saturday from Twitter. I tweeted something about Correa not coming.
Stole it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Oh yeah. And I don't know. Shockingly, don't know the person's name. But somebody tweeted me about Correa and said, "Why are you assuming he's not coming back? He's not having a great year."
I think it was Ross actually that said this. Ross Brendel.
Well, anyway, it's a good.
Yeah, he's your coworker for several years, actually.
Yeah. Ross Brendel. If it was you, I apologize. If it wasn't, I thought it was somebody else. I don't know. I don't really care. My point is, I have been of the mind, like blinders, right? Correa's gone, because it just makes sense. There's an opt-out, and he's really good. But then, when you go back and look at the stats, they're not great. I think he's done a lot of good things. And again, for the second consecutive offseason, there's going to be some big name free agent shortstops that are going to create a competitive market. Xander Bogaerts of Boston is one. The guy from the Dodgers is Turner.
Trey Turner.
Yep, Trey Turner is one.
Dansby Swanson is also a free agent.
Yeah, and that's a huge one. So the point is, for the second consecutive year, there's going to be competition that's going to make it very hard because we still think at the age, I believe he's 28 now, Correa wants a 10-year contract or an 8-year contract, a long-term, huge commitment. If he gets himself to free agency winter of 2023, next year, it's going to be, I think the market then is going to be a lot more favorable. So I decided, you know what? That's not a bad point. Like, I need to stop thinking of he's gone for sure. Not because he desperately wants to stay here, but because the circumstances might dictate Scott Boras saying, opt back in for a year and then let's go. Maybe.
Yeah, well, I think to that point, he's been really valuable for the Twins, and I think he's been a huge catalyst behind the scenes, pushing for them to be as aggressive as they were at the trade deadline. But he's also having one of the worst years of his career, and it's not a train wreck season because he's a really good player. But whatever you want to look at, you want to look at OPS, you want to look at some of the defensive metrics, you want to look at wins above replacement. He's on track to be like a 3 wins above replacement player, but at his peak, I think he's more like 4, 5, 6. So again, not a train wreck season. He's been valuable, and he's made some big plays defensively, and I think his presence, the fact that he's on the team and contributing at the level that he is part of the reason why the Twins are leading the division on the field. And then from what I've heard behind the scenes, him sort of pushing, respectfully, but pushing for the Twins to be aggressive at the deadline. I don't think they make the moves that they did if he's not on the field and if he's not behind the scenes.
Yes.
So his impact has already paid off. Them being aggressive before the season, even if he's not having a career year, has led to them being in this place and adding the pieces that they did at the trade deadline.
And so he, in my opinion, is what Nelson Cruz was in 2019 locker room wise. But here's the difference. And this, I think, is incredibly important. At the plate, he has definitely not performed up to the expectations that we probably all had when he surprisingly signed with the Twins in March. But I will continue to go back to this because we take it for granted. When you watch him at shortstop, and look, he has made errors. I get that. He's made some. I get that. He's not perfect. But you know what he is? He's damn good. And he plays a premium position that is incredibly tough. And he makes plays now that I think we as fans say, well, of course he did. He's Carlos Correa. And the reality is, if you plug like the last 5 to 10 to 15 Twin shortstops in, they don't make a lot of those plays. And so I think what he's brought from a clubhouse standpoint, which in my opinion is huge, and what he's brought from an up-the-middle defensive standpoint, and also, Phil, he is, and this is important, ideally, your shortstop is your captain. Like, he's your defensive captain. He is the captain of, he's the guy that can make the infield at the very least tick, right? Sets a tone. He does those things. He is the consummate professional, and he's damn good at a lot of things that I think are difficult. And so I would never say, well, that didn't work out. Now, would we all like to see the offensive statistics go up? Absolutely. But I would never sit here and say, you know what, the Twins would be in first place right now without him, because I don't think that they would be. And I also think your point is dead on. I don't think that they make the trades, which were substantial deadline deals. I think they make a trade, but I don't think they make the trades to get 3 pitchers if Jorge Polanco is your 2022 starting shortstop.
I think it's unequivocally, yes, it's been worth it. Let's also look at, all right, so their shortstop before Carlos Correa, and I know there were some apples and oranges moved around here, but Isaiah Kiner-Falefa was going to be their shortstop. He was here for like maybe 36, 48 hours. But Isaiah Kiner-Falefa has been worth about a little less than a win than Carlos Correa this season. He's been a decent hitter. He's hitting like 271, but Carlos Correa is worth 2.8 WAR. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is worth 1.6. So he's been worth over a win more than Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. So that's an upgrade there. I think what's also invaluable to not just the behind the scenes things is this dude has played in 79 playoff games. He's not even 30 yet, and he has played in 79 postseason games. And the Twins, whether it's the 04 teams, the early 2010 team, 2017, 2019, 2020, the list goes on. No matter who was on that roster, that core at the end of the day usually kind of bleeped down their leg. Carlos Correa does not have that in him. He's been to multiple World Series. That type of leadership is invaluable. And even if he's having a lesser offensive season than we're used to, he's still an above average offensive player. So it's unequivocally been worth it. But to the point of people saying, well, if his numbers aren't great, could he potentially do one more opt-in? And then if he cashes back out after 2023, which is still on the table, that could be a potential opportunity, but I think he's been unequivocally worth it. And externally, last thing to externally is, I mean, the season ticket holder factor. Like the Twins needed something to get a little bit of a jolt. And I know their attendance hasn't been great this year, but fans needed some reason to come out to the ballpark, and Carlos Correa definitely sparked that idea.
See, if he has a big second half, and if he contributes in, let's say, a playoff series, and they win a game, or maybe they win a series, doesn't that make it more likely he's going to opt out? You know, I'm trying to think, maybe to frame this a different way. Are there any scenarios you can see in which, barring injury, he opts back in as a healthy player at the end of the year? Or is there any scenario you guys can see that the Twins are the team that says, hey, All right, so I know Corey Seager got 10 years, 325 from the Rangers when he was like 27. And Francisco Lindor, when he was 27, got 10 years, $340 million from the Mets. So we will give you, consider this year one. 1 year, he's the highest paid shortstop on an annual basis at $35 million. He doesn't have the 9-year commitment. So consider this year one, but we'll give you 8 years or 9 years going forward and $250 to $300 million. Is there any chance that happens, and is there any chance he opts back in if he's healthy at the end of the year?
I think there's a very small chance that the Twins give out that type of contract. I just do. I think because of the statistics that Correa has put up this season, I think that they might look at what he is trying to get, which is a massive contract. And the problem is they're not going to have a commodity in Correa that is impossible to find, right? Because you've got 3 shortstops. I mean, I think that the problem this past year was when the stoppage came to an end, the work stoppage, that Boris took his client to market, and teams were like, "Dude, we've got 4 guys here."
Like you're talking like Trevor Story.
Yes, I'm talking
Corey
about the competition on the open market. I mean, to get what Carlos wants, I think you almost need to have him be the only gem, the only one, and he's not. And so if he had an incredible year, I think he's probably gone. I guess what I've been told to give some thought to, and I like this, is he hasn't. And so is there going to be a team that says we could sign Turner, Bogarts, Swanson? No, we're going to sign Carlos to a 10-year contract. And my guess is the answer is probably no. Mm-hmm. So it's circumstances.
Yeah, like it's these baseball contracts are so tough because a lot of guys don't hit free agency until they're in their late 20s, like 27, 28, because it takes a while to get called up, and then you're in the pipeline for 6 years until you can hit free agency. Right. And then they want these 8, 9, 10-year contracts that take them into their late 30s, and time again, we see these as just terrible deals. The Albert Pujols one is probably the George Washington on the Mount Rushmore of bad 8, 9, 10-year contracts. So, yeah, I don't think Boris would even give the Twins, like, for the Twins to make this happen, if they decided, screw it, we're going to give him an 8, 9, 10-year contract because we just love what he brings. He's a leader. He plays a premium position. We'll figure out the Royce Lewis thing later. Maybe Royce slides into second base after Polanco's done. I don't know. Maybe Royce plays third. Whatever. We'll figure that out. But we know we need Carlos Correa. I don't think they'd even be given a chance mid-season. If they said today, if they went to Boris and said, dude, God, we can't get enough of your guy. Here's a contract offer. He wants 5 other teams to potentially be in the bidding. Right. But how many teams, like you said, Judd? I mean, there might be more of a market for shortstops this winter than last winter because you've got Bogarts, Trey Turner, and Dansby Swanson all in the prime of their careers. And Bogarts, by the way, I don't think he's officially opted out yet, but he has to opt out. He's going to. He makes $20 million a year. He's not even one of the 5 highest paid.
And
the top shortstops are making 35 now. Yes.
So
correct.
I think he's gone.
Yep. So I don't see them getting into a bidding war for an 8, 9, 10-year, $300 million contract. I don't even know if he's going to get those offers. Trevor Story wanted something like that too. Trevor Story wound up settling, quote unquote, for 6 years, $140 million. Which you'll still be able to feed your kids just fine with 6 years, $140 million. So I think you're just kind of hoping at this point for Correa to get hot down the stretch and perform well to lead you to the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game, playoff series. And then you kind of cross your fingers and say, all right, well, maybe he opts back in because he doesn't want to compete with the other 3 big-time free agents. Maybe he wants to go into next, 2023 into 2024. Or maybe he loves it in Minnesota so much that he would be willing to listen if the Twins weren't the highest bidder. Maybe he would be willing to, but it was still like $250 million over 8 years or something. Maybe he'd be willing to play ball with a deal like that. But I don't know. It feels unlikely to me.
And going into the offseason of after this year, so going into the 2024 season, the only real viable shortstop free agent as of now is Tim Anderson. So it'd be Carlos Correa, Tim Anderson hitting the open market, and Correa turns 30 in like a month here, turns 28 in a month. He'll be 30 in that offseason of 2023 going into 24. So it'll be him and Timmy Anderson basically duking it out as the top shortstops available. So there could be an idea there that he could cash in because there's not going to be as many people out on the market. But I would think if you're the Twins, like he's making $35 million right now, I would say you probably have to rip up the contract and then offer him $40 million per. Like let's just call it $40 million per over 5 years. And I don't know if the Twins are going to do that.
And he's not the best shortstop. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He's really good.
He's very good.
But he's not the best shortstop.
No. The term concerns me too. Because if they're going after 8 to 10 years, I'm probably out. I hate those contracts. I absolutely abhor them. I think that they are. Name me the last 10-year contract that worked really well. I mean, Cano was a disaster. He's like bouncing around now. I think the Braves picked him up and then cut him almost immediately because he's so cooked. Pujols was an absolute disaster. I mean, he's still a productive player at times, but my God. So, like, if I was the Twins, I'm not doing 8 to 10 years. I probably would draw the line at 7 years or so. But, like, it's not just a slam dunk of, just give you be the team. Well, okay, I will be, but it's got to be reasonable. And I am not going to give a guy term that so exceeds common sense. Like, I would never do, if I was a team or a GM, I would never do anything over 8 years, and 8 years is pushing it to me.
Yeah. See,
for position players.
Yeah, once he gets to 34, 35, is he going to be able to play shortstop at a high level? That's the thing. Like, but some of these deals, you might front load them while the player's in their prime, and then shave some money off on the back end of the deal. So could you get him to 37, 38 million, keep him the highest paid shortstop for the first 3 or 4 years, and then it comes back down the hill toward the back end? There's another factor here that the Twins should not sleep on that we should touch on in this sort of state of Carlos Correa episode, but let's talk about the state of Judd Zulgad's belly here for a second.
Well, yeah, the state is good. The state is good. In fact, as I've been talking about now for months, down 40 pounds thanks to my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers. And here's the best part. I'm keeping the weight off. That is the toughest thing, right? We've all lost weight and we've all gained weight back. But in this case, I have the tools, I have the knowledge, and I am now on a plan where I can continue to keep the weight off. In fact, my wife, Dawn, she said, "You've lost so much weight. I'd like to too." She's down about 14 pounds now. So the Zulgad household, all about teamwork, down 50 plus pounds. And right now, it's Livia's exclusive end of summer anniversary offer. You can join the program for 50% off. That's right. Imagine that, getting in shape, dropping the weight, all of a sudden all those clothes fit. 50% off right now. Call 855-GO-LIVIA. Visit Livia, Livea.com. Livia.com. It's the first step towards you getting to look like you want you.
Since we're talking about nutrition and health and all those things, let's also talk about how it impacts our dogs. The official dog food of Mackie and Judd is Nutrisource, a third-generation family-owned operation out of Perham, Minnesota. You'll see a picture here on the Score North YouTube channel. This is Stella the dog, Stella Zulgad, sitting next to her little training treats. Maya loves these training treats,
They're
by
really
the
good.
way.
The dogs love them. Yeah.
She almost tore apart the pocket of one of them. I left a pair of shorts on the ground with some training treats in a pocket.
Dude.
And she was
Oh,
like,
boy.
dude.
What do you do? Did you really do that?
Yeah, listen, I mean, she loves the treats. I can't blame her.
No, I know, but you got to keep the treats out of the pocket because then the dog is tempted. Yes. Stella absolutely thinks that those treats are great. And the food, I'm going to tell you right now, 6:15 this morning, Dad got woken up because Stella said, "It is time for my Nutrisource. Get your butt out of bed and feed me." And so I did.
NutrisourcePetFoods.com to find a retailer near you. NutrisourcePetFoods.com, the official dog food of Mackie and Judd. So another thing here that, and again, this was I think this was sort of gifted to the Twins, that Scott Boras said, "Hey, it doesn't look like we're going to get that 10-year contract this time around. The season's about to start.
Yep.
How would you guys like your very own Carlos Correa for $35 million?" 1 year deal, kind of, and then we get to dictate if it's a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, because it's player option. So the Twins shouldn't have to apologize necessarily. They've got Carlos Correa on their team, and the fact that they made this signing and then subsequently went out and made these aggressive trades at the deadline, it's helping to change the perception, or should I say the reality, of how this team operates. They are largely averse to making splashy moves at the deadline, and they generally don't get their hands on top free agents in their prime. Josh Donaldson was like 4 or 5 years removed from his MVP season. There were some major injury issues. It was a big splash, but it wasn't like they were signing him, 5 other teams interested, 28 years old. He was into his 30s, right? And there's been a couple of, like Nelson Cruz was great, but he was also toward the end of his career. But in terms of in their prime sought after free agents, the Twins don't get guys like Carlos Correa. And right. The Twins don't make trades for 3 really good pitchers at the deadline. So this whole last 3 or 4 months, spearheaded by Carlos Correa, has helped to change the perception and the reality of how this franchise operates. It hasn't necessarily shown up in attendance figures as much as I maybe thought it would, but it's something that I think they should keep an eye on, that if they keep doing things like this, they will get back in the good graces with fans. They will win more games in the postseason, and they will have a chance to maybe be actually relevant instead of a laughingstock in October.
Yeah, and I think if the Twins can win a playoff game, which we have talked about continually, I think the perception immediately begins to change significantly, right? Because that 18-game streak is an albatross. It is such an embarrassment. Like it's the punchline of punchlines. You have the longest losing streak in North American sports history of any sport that we basically follow. And so I think a playoff win is a huge step towards changing a perception that the one thing that this administration hasn't changed one bit is that. The other thing I think about Correa that's so intriguing, and we saw this with Cruz too in 2019, and this is where it gets to be really interesting because there have been some, by the Falvey regime, some massive misjudgments and some great moves, is the chemistry of the clubhouse. Go back to, was it 2018 when Lance Lynn signed in spring training and Addison Reed came aboard and, some decent little pieces. And we're all like, oh, man. And it was a disaster. It was a disaster. Those guys were, well, in Reed's case, I think he was just a big jerk. Lynn was unhappy. Everyone felt like they hadn't got paid. It was a complete disaster. 19, Cruz comes aboard. Completely changes everything. And I think it speaks to this too, right or wrong. I think the Twins don't have, from their core group, a ton of strong personalities. I think Rosario was, and I think he was goofy but liked. But I think Buxton is a good guy. I think he's very smart. But I think he's I'm going to let my play talk for me guy. Mm-hmm. So I don't think Buxton takes control, which is, again, that's not a criticism. It's what I perceive to be the reality. Anyway, last year, JD, right? I mean, Byron Buxton basically said, I couldn't stand the guy. The clubhouse sucked. That doesn't help you at all, especially when until the meltdown on Sunday, Rocco has never been like this really strong character guy himself as far as I'm taking control now. It definitely felt like in 19, Rocco much preferred the fact that Cruz played a huge role in setting the tone in the clubhouse. Now with Carlos, we're sort of back there. And I don't, we can crunch all the stats that we want, and they're important. I'm not discounting them. But, if you don't understand the importance of chemistry in sports, you're playing fantasy sports. Mm-hmm. Like, those are rosters. I put together my roster. It's fantastic. Okay, but do you have the right people? And that's where I think the Correa thing is such a gift. I mean, it's very clear from the day he got here, and this is an it factor, because he didn't know, a ton of this team, but from the day he got here, I think the tone of that clubhouse changed, not just because he's won, not just because he is at his best a great player, but he also is a guy who has the it factor that people gravitate towards. And I think that's been a huge part of the fact that this team is afloat still.
I think he's one of the only players on the roster that has been on a team that has won a playoff game. There's probably some others I'd have to go kind of comb through, but none of the longtime Twins, if you've just been in the Twins organization, you haven't won a playoff game before. So it'd have to be one of the other outsiders, like Chris Archer has been
Gary and Gio.
Yep. So
Twins.
Yeah. So I think that matters. I don't, again, give me the more talented player over the more experienced or,
right.
Decorated player. But I do think there's a place for it, and I think you're right about some of the things that Carlos Correa brings are hidden value that you wouldn't necessarily see on Fangraphs stat page. So so there it is. There's your sort of state of we think it's worth it to this point, and if you're going to have Carlos Correa, you should double down at the deadline. They did. So another green check mark, and now we'll just kind of see, is he playing out his last couple months in a Twins uniform, or is there a path for him to remain a Twin for next season?